So I used to run C4D, Computing for Development. And there was this startup called Funky Sci. And we met them at the Innovate Nairobi. They were one of the presenters. I didn't get to interact with them, but it started back in the day, I think 2014. And what they were trying to do is make science fun to kids. So they could go do an experiment. Of course, parents pay some fee. And that, I think, also like brought children close to science and like it from the fun side of things. Because science mostly is presented as this hard thing that, even you don't even understand why you need to learn some of this. But now you've talked about propulsion. So what happens in that propulsion? Because most of us, even scientists like us, we see Starlink launch some rocket and then there's a lot of fire and then it cuts. It's what do you call it? It cuts off. Then something else happens and to some extent there is no fire. So that fire is where the chemical reaction is happening. So what actually happens around there?
Mostly what will happen is you'll have a lot of kinetic energy. You have like a lot of build-up of energy. And the best thing about energy is that it's able to propagate itself for a long time. And so that's why you find that once, for instance, in this more commercial rockets, you'll have it burn for a while, ignite out the fire, mostly it's usually liquid hydrogen, and then have that energy propel itself for a while. So that when you're able to cut it off at around 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 kilometers, it's still able to continuously propel itself. So for us, being that we don't go to such high distances, we basically just build very small, not very small, but just small enough, compact propellant, basically cooking potassium sorbitol. It's called KNSP. Potassium nitrate sorbitol.
So potassium and what was the second one? I can
sorbitol. Sorbitol is a chemical.
Is a chemical by itself. Okay.
Yes. And so cooking it and just mixing it together, it's very. We should actually share these videos of how people actually cook.
Yes.
I will. Of just making and then now compacting it. So just placing it into very tight packets. So if you have seen. There's these things we used to play with when we were kids that used to light up like fireworks. Not fair.
Which one?
They even bought they're usually red, the very red things with like a thread, and then you just light it up and it.
The balutis.
Baruti, yes. Baruti, yes. So.
You guys are so bougie. You used to buy those things to just play with them? Or you made them?
You used to make them.
Oh, you used to make them?
No, me, I never used to make them.
Anything I played with, I used to make it.
For real?
Yeah, except Banta. You don't know if you know Banta.
Bano.
Bano, yeah.
That's so interesting. I used to buy them for like...
We used even to make... I'm sharing too much. We used to make even wire cars model. Like you would see Nissan Sunny was a big deal then. But nowadays, you have a Nissan Sunny.
Build an OG.
But Nissan Sunny, we could see it. You know how they pimp it to have even some nice sporty looking, and then Safari Rally was big. So you could see some nice model and then make them and then sell them to other kids. Like when you're driving it, a kid, a bougie kid sees that car or that wire, whatever. They used to use they're called what? Wire mesh.
Oh yeah, yes.
So when they cry for it, the parent has to buy it and like, how much is this? Give us like 500, and then 500 was really good money. And then you make another one, right? So those are some of the things that you used to make. I have a brother who is a proper engineer because when he started making radios when he was, I don't know, class 6 or 7, but unfortunately he didn't pursue it as a career. He could really make a really good electrical engineer. But for me, I was a guy who used to be made things, and I was the luckiest guy.
You're the one who was selling them now?
Me, I was more of a silent kid. I was a last born, so you can imagine. So, of course, everything was done for me. Especially, but I could do it if I wanted to. So, I think you can see what is happening here. But I used to see this actually happen in real time. And I was so fascinated, like how could you be able even to think and shape those wires to really form right angles? This one will go this one and then tie it using the what? tube. They got the bladders from the bicycle tube or car tubes.
Yeah.
So they tie
the black
the black ones.
Okay.
Actually, some of them were like brownish. Yeah. So they could actually make different colors of those cars because they could tie all the wires using those bladders, and their car could really look neat.
Yeah.
Some of them were as strong as carrying a kilogram of sugar, and you're driving it.
Some ingenuity right there.
It was crazy. Like, that's why I believe Africans, again, if we really harness in this ingenuity, we could not be buying cars anywhere. We could actually be making our own model of cars and anything else. But at the end of the day, we'll get there. I'm so sure about it. So, yeah, when you talk about these things, I'm like, did you make these things? Yeah. But anyway, I understand why you could buy it.
Yeah. At the time, I did not know where my life would take me.
Yeah.
So basically, just pack them up, then fire them out. So as you fire it out, it produces actually fire and also a lot of energy as it combusts. So that energy is what propels it.
Yeah. So how far do you propel those rockets?
We have iterations. So for each iteration, we have a different goal. So the first one was 50 meters. We got to 32 meters. The second one was a target goal of 500 meters. We got to over 200 meters. And then now we're at 2 kilometers. Targets of 2 kilometers.
Now the target is
the current iteration now is 2 kilometers.
So let me ask this.
Yes.
So when you target this, do you do the calculation of the mix-up? How long it will take to burn?
Yeah.
And how do you go about this? Do you like burn it and see how far it will burn? Do you create an environment that this chemical will burn? Because a different environment will burn this
differently.
Yeah.
For sure. So the best thing about all this is that space has become democratized. So there's a lot of information out there, right? So that's usually the first step. So there are equations that have been made publicly available. There are data sets that have been made publicly available. So
by SpaceX or everyone?
By SpaceX, by Richard Naka, by us, for instance. Nakuj is also open source. So you want to build a rocket, you can just follow a documentation, build your own iteration of a rocket, right? So there's so many other organizations, both student and open source and rather commercial. Organizations that have made this open source. So basically, using data sets, you're able to learn. Using equations, you're also then able to predict what you want and what you need to get to what you want, right? Yeah. So the first step of everything is usually sitting down, going back to your equations, going back to your chemistry, going back to your physics, going back to your mechanical, because again there's also a lot of mechanics that comes into play. So going back into the nitty-gritty of all that. Then from there you're able to say, so we wanted to get to 50 meters, so how much of potassium do we need, how much of sorbitol do we need to be able to propel, and for how long do we need to burn it for us to get to 50 meters? How long do we need to burn it for us to get to 2 kilometers? How big do we need it for it to burn to 2 kilometers? Again, there's also now and I think this comes into questions of systems engineering, because there's also a concern of weight, because you don't want it to be very heavy, because then otherwise you'll reduce your target. It's called an apogee, the maximum height you want to get to. You'll reduce your apogee if your rocket is if it's too heavy, right? If it's too light, then it might not burn it might actually even burn up. So there's like so many intricacies that we now want to look into.
Have you ever carried someone in that rocket?
No. You can't even fit your hand. You can't even fit your hand in it.
I was just thinking out loud, then it doesn't come back. Has any of those come back landed safely?
Safely.
It's a relative.
We're working on it. We're working on it. Safety is very, very important, but unfortunately we haven't ever been able to deploy parachutes, because ideally we would want to have parachutes. So for all our iterations, we haven't been successful in deploying parachutes, but this current iteration, we are very, very hopeful, because we have done a little bit more tests, we have done a little bit more simulations and more live testing, the likes. So we're actually very excited to launch, because we want to see whether it works.
Oh, nice. I believe Elon Musk if you're listening, there's a girl who can use expertise around here. But also Elon Musk believes that if they have done something, they should open source it. And I think most of it is open source. And they have done all these things actually successfully. You guys, do you use some of that knowledge or?
We do, but contextually.
Okay.
Understand that they're having very big rockets, and the propellant they're using right now is actually liquid propellant, not solid propellant. So for us, you can either have it as liquid or solid, right?
Oh, so your packets are solid?
Solid,
and
yes.
you ignite them and then
Yes.
something else. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So you can either have your propellant to be either solid or liquid.
So liquid is more complex because you have to release
yeah,
it.
there's with pressure, with
compressed,
exactly
all
compression.
that.
You're looking at things like nulls, you know. So it's a
But is
little
it more
bit
efficient?
Complex. It is more efficient, especially the further up you go, or like the further higher you go, it is more efficient.
Okay.
So ideally, currently, I will get to that. So with SpaceX, some of their data, most of their data is actually open source, but we use it contextually, what works for us.
Yeah.
So for instance, things like the avionics systems do work for us, right? Because we'll see that the kind of data that they're collecting here is also the kind of data that we need.
Yeah.
So for avionics systems, we can use that. But for propulsion, then comes a bit of a concern. With airframe, also comes a bit of a concern because you're using very small rockets.
Yeah.
But we do use data. So currently, we have this. Okay, we're funded by JKUAT. And for final year, you can actually do your as a final year project. So I have a friend of mine whom they actually, two groups actually are working on building a liquid engine for future uses.
Yeah.
So they're actually in touch and in conversation with some SpaceX engineers so that they're able to, they actually, I think, have meetings almost on a weekly basis just to share information or like to also
should
understand.
be building these things.
Sorry?
You should be building these things.
Yes, we should.
You should. Yeah.
Okay, my interest is not in liquid propulsion. It's not in propulsion. It's in the avionics system, in the computer, in the brain.
Computing.
Yes,
Okay.
in the computing time.
Yeah,
So again, there's so many. There are nuances even in that rocketry system. So for instance, for us, we have a propulsion team, so both solid and liquid. We have an airframe team, so the basic framework, how the body looks like, how the fins will be placed, how it will look like. What material to be used, and then there's also now the computing and the brain behind it. What kind of data are we going to be collecting? For how long? How are we going to be deploying our parachute? So for me, that's now where my interests lie.
Yeah. And how is that working out?
Very fun, very, very fun.
Yeah.
I like failing.
But I understand also with rocket the margin, should be really thin.
Yes.
or zero.
Yes.
Of course, zero is impossible, but
Yes.
it should be really, really thin because you can imagine if I wanted a rocket to land in Kisumu and then it lands in Kampala.
That's a big problem.
So many issues that even they can cause war. Actually,
for
if
sure,
you think
for
about
sure.
it. If someone was in that rocket, maybe like Junn, well educated, charismatic, then they burst into flame out there. That's a life lost.
Yeah.
Or we send you to the moon and then we can't bring you back. Because now the
Stuck in
software
the moon. It'd actually be a good, interesting movie.
There's so many things that actually, when you think about them practically, you see why error is not allowed.
True.
Or maybe it should be minimal. Have you ever thought of becoming an astronaut?
At one point I did.
Yeah.
But I think I like being on ground with earth more. I like to feel the ground, the sand.
But there's
the
ground on
feel
the moon,
of,
on the Mars.
Yeah.
Elon is taking
If you do get there, I'm not saying we won't, but I'm not very incentivized to want to become an astronaut for now.
Yeah.
For now.
Yes, let it be said. Like,
You're
for now,
working
I want to build systems that go to Mars.
But you remain
One
here.
day, I feel like I'd want to let the first iteration of guys go to Mars.
See how that goes.
Just, it's just
You don't want to be the test subject.
I can't. I'm a baby girl. I'm children. I will die.
So, we're not taking you to mass. But one thing I've seen with Elon is that for sure he is going to mass.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You know, when he talked about landing back the space, back I think in before even 2010, I can't be sure when, everyone thought he's mad.
I know.
NASA actually was the government was suing him for even thinking. But look at it right now. When he said he'll change the way people access the internet, people thought he's joking. Yes.
That's how
He talked about changing social media. People thought, oh, there's another joke. Twitter. You changed Twitter. He did. Okay, it's debatable, but you can see a lot of things. And that's a drive that I feel like most Africans have. Elon is African. Let no one tell you otherwise. If he's not, maybe he has drunk African water. I hear by there's power in water.
There is power in the water. There is power in the water.
Someone who is more knowledgeable than I am, not from school though, they told me actually people speak the way they speak because of the water they drink.
You serious?
Yeah. To some extent, by the way, you see how you're thinking about it for a minute.
Let me ask. So then if I go take water in KCSE or in Mombasa, I'll speak different?
Not immediately, but over time. You've never noticed if you go to... It's debatable though, so don't think discuss on this stuff.
Okay.
But have you ever noticed when you go to Mombasa, for some reason your accent changes?
I think it's actually ingrained in us for your accent to change. Ever had someone come back from India with an Indian accent?
To some extent.
To some extent?
Yeah.
To the huge extent that people do go to Mombasa for 2 days and come back with an accent.
It can be debated this way. Don't look at the underlying factors. Like, I want to speak like Costello. No. Look at it this way. Already you have the accent that you acquired over time, right? So of course we're not expecting you the next day. These are Swahili or these are US or these are an English whatever. But look even the way even here in Kenya, how our dialect, you can have a Kale who speaks a little bit different, you can have a Kikuyu who speaks a bit kidogo. But when you see this, they're divided by the rivers, the way the rivers flows. Just think about for a minute. At first I was like, these stories are Jabba.
I see that.
But it's just out there. Just think about it. And when I thought about it, by the way, it made a lot of sense. To some extent.
It does, but I'm not quite sure if it's the water though, but it does.
That's why I said it's debatable. So,
because for instance, I'm Kikuyu, you're Kikuyu, right?
I'm not a Kikuyu, but yeah.
Okay.
I'm a Bantu.
You're a Bantu. Yeah. All right, I'll give you an example of Kikuyu. That you'll hear someone speak with a Nyeri accent, and you'll be like, that's a Nyeri person. And then in Kiambu and Murang'a, especially amongst themselves, able to hear the nuances. And
most of those regions are separated by rivers.
That's what I'm saying. It makes sense. It makes sense, but
it's just the region. The river just falls in the region.
You look at people who live.
No, I mean someone can say people interact even in those regions, but it doesn't change how they speak.
They speak for sure.
Yeah, of course. As I said, it's debatable, but
she's not buying
and the reason why even I give it a thought is because there's this research that we do over time, and it tells us this is the way.
Yeah.
And when you investigate further, you find by the way, this is the way. So even this one is it's just something I'm throwing out there for Africans, especially because you see, even for us, we don't even pay attention to our dialect.
Yeah.
Have you ever realized that? Like we speak the way we speak. Yeah. So what? But we are trying to learn the Indian accent, the English accent, the US accent, the Japanese accent. And for them, actually, they have gone ahead to document all these dialects and variations. Like even when you go to Chinese, they have... People think just Chinese is Chinese. Chinese has several variations, Mandarin, I don't know what. And there's the standardization of this to make sense. And this way now, this becomes even more interesting. I don't know which app I'm using from China, and I changed it to Chinese. So
wait, what? You it's a Chinese-based app that was in English.
Yes, amongst the language, I said, why can't I select Chinese?
Oh wow.
Okay, I was trying to enable something, and I read somewhere, if you change it to Chinese, automatically you'll find this feature enabled.
How is that coming for you? How is that coming along?
It's a good story. Now, changing back,
You don't know where the language
I was almost learning Mandarin. And I realized some of these things I'm looking for, they're not written the same, but
Yeah.
someone who doesn't know, it looks the same.
The same.
Yeah.
And also, when I thought about it, about how you pronounce English,
Yeah.
right? We don't even pay so much attention to that even when you're learning English, by the way. It's not even a subject that we sit down and learn, but maybe the CBC is teaching that. So I realized something can be written differently to be pronounced differently. And that's what actually helped me. Because I was looking for something specific where it's different. And I was able to change back to English. Because I thought, okay, this settings is written this way, language is written this way, and then you go to this, and then now you can select. Because while under languages, you're able to see English or Espanol or
Yeah.
but it was
So
a
something.
very good night.
Right
It was at night actually, and it's good that you break things at night if you are scientists or anything to do.
Had it from him.
Yeah, so I don't know why he shared all that, but the languages to some extent goes to that extent. Why do you go to the languages? But anyway, so besides the propulsion which you're not interested in deeply, but also it comes down to computing, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So you want to focus with software.
Yes, hardware and software.
We're talking about margin of error.
Oh, yes.
So this is not just another software you write. You have to write it the right way. So how has that been for you?
I think the best thing for us, especially, is how iterative engineering is. You know, so before we launch, there's a whole task line and a whole workload and a whole process that you need to have done, and it's a lot of tests. I'm pretty sure, Sylvia, you had friends who are always talking about, I'm going for a test, I'm going for a test, I'm going for a test.
Yeah.
You're not going to actually launch the rocket, but you're just going to check, is where I am better than where I was yesterday? Is my code working better than how it was yesterday?
Yeah.
Is my body better than how it was yesterday? Is my propulsion system better than how it was yesterday? So it's very iterative, and that provides a very good wiggle room for correcting our failures and learning as we go. So tomorrow, the kind of problems you experience today are not the problems you'll experience tomorrow, right? And documenting it as we go. So you'll find that the problems that the people who are in Nakuja, we call the batches N1, N2, N3. So the people who had the issues that the N1 team faced is not the issues that N2 team faces, because we're documenting it as we go, and we're also saying, here's why I failed, so don't do this.
Yeah.
So don't do this. Don't follow this. Follow this other way, right? And now N3 comes along and we document this, and we say, this is what we've been able to do. This is what we're doing. This is what we have failed at.
Yeah.
So help us. But also at the same time, for N4, don't do the same thing. So it's very iterative and very back and forth. So ideally, by the time you're going for a launch, you're almost certain that your margin of error has reduced significantly. But also you can't take away the fact that whatever can go wrong will go wrong. But yeah, we try reduce the number of wrongs.
Murphy's Law.
Yes, Murphy's Law for sure.
Okay. So given this is the issue, which language do you guys use?
Mostly C, C++, Python.
You guys use Python.
MicroPython from time to time.
There's a reason why I'm laughing.
Why are you laughing?
Python is crazy, especially at scale. In terms of error, actually, reduction. Yeah. And that's what's good with data, because the data allows you to do a lot of crazy stuff with
sure.
errors and still works, because that's essentially what you're measuring in data is the margin of error.
Margin of error.
So you're expecting it. But it's fascinating you guys use C and C++, because the way C is designed, it's either 0 or 1, which makes it really good. C++, why C++ though?
Again, most of it you'll realize is you build for the hardware you are going to be using. So you'll find that the hardware you're using is compatible with probably C or C++. So then it becomes easier then to build up of that.
Yeah. And there's a huge opportunity in rocket science.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure,
I was checking Starlink the other day.
Right?
It's just that they're hiring in US. I wish they were hiring in Africa.
They should
No,
look
that
into
one you can. Elon was very straightforward. You can't do remote. He's
need
the
to
first
test
guy who said
until
people should get back to the
get back
office
to the
or
office.
get another job. And it's good to be straightforward, because how do you develop a rocket in your house
If it's-
or build a software and then send, and if
push your
there is
code.
error?
Just-
Yeah, this is not where you just say, you know what, next week's sprint
and
will
I think
fix
it's because there's a lot of like, and even if you watch some of the animes, some of the launches, it's usually now they have learned the art of building fast.
Yeah.
Before, it used to take time because they used to keep on failing and have to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
And it becomes very difficult to do that when you're doing it remotely,
Yeah.
because they'll send you a whole rocket.
Yeah. Musk
Tinker with that. Exactly.
Musk himself used to spend hours and hours in the garage, not even in the office, in the garage, especially with Tesla. Now imagine rockets. So it was very clear that, especially started with his executives. And Atlassian, which is, work from wherever. But of course I see where he's coming from.
Yeah.
Because everything starts from the leadership. And I'm not saying actually working remotely is totally bad, but there's some things actually, if you really want true results and get them efficiently, you have to be physically there. Not the office.
Physically
For
on site.
Yeah, on site. You see, when you see the office, there's this analogy, office, desk,
Sit at desk.
like Sterling, most of their offices are workshops.
Exactly it. Workshop is your office.
And something about
I
Elon,
like
by the way, I don't know if you have checked this. He has tried to roboticize everything. Because you see, robot, they can work 24 hours,
For sure.
7 days a week, 365 days, and they're reliable. As long as your code really
Programmed
works,
it well.
That's true.
But of course, he realized that is not sustainable. He went to China and Vietnam to open. Maybe we should talk more about Elon next time.
We should. I think I really like the way he looks. He's very radical in his thoughts.
Yeah.
He's very
But
radical.
smart.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's very stretches the like your fabric of thought. It's like, what's the worst?
Do you think marijuana contributes to that?
Oh,
Now that you come from Jamaica?
now that I come from JKUAT,
No,
Have
to
it on
Jamaica.
Juja,
Should say, we'll have it on record.
Yeah.
you have it on record. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Again, I like to say, if I don't have a frame of reference, then I can't answer a question. So I don't have a frame of reference.
It's because there is also this controversial. You can say not.
Let's hear it.
The way you have not. The why the Juja engineers are really good is because of the availability of, is it cannabis? What?
Sativa.
It's sativa. Marijuana is cannabis sativa.
Yeah.
The availability, the quality, and the affordability. That's why it's called Jamaica. And of course, even Elon has smoked live. It's easy. Like for him, it's like, okay, don't do it, but
If you do it, it's not all bad.
Yeah.
But don't do it.
Yeah, he has done that severally, and he has really given some crazy points when he does that. So like, okay. But also, I would not advise you not to use any kind of drug for that matter, especially if you're not sure how it will work for you. But also, I'm changing that a bit because we have seen it getting legalized, and not ever, when we were growing up, like, if you smoke this thing, you'll go mad. But I've not seen the whole US go mad. But it's debatable.
I don't
Maybe
think the
US is already
United
mad.
States is the best frame of reference. It's not.
But it has always been it has always been legal in Netherlands.
It has.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, that's the first country I traveled to, and those they call coffee shops. Yeah, you go and buy your thing, either edible or otherwise, you have some good time. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Like one of the biggest tourists is the people who come over the weekend just to, have a good time.
Just chill.
It's one of the
Tourist attraction.
countries
Oh,
where
Lord.
they have legalized that amongst, the
Others.
Europe members. So when you think about it, it's like, should I? By the way, guys, don't use it if you don't have to. Yeah, you are good the way you are, Yeah, but someone else brought another debate around that. Tea is also a drug.
Sure.
Coffee is a drug.
100%.
Depending on how you look at it.
Yeah.